The United Kingdom's new king has arrived in London ahead of the official ceremony to pronounce him as the king. King Charles III is expected to give his first address to the country following his mother's passing. Queen Elizabeth II passed away on Thursday at the age of 96. During the mourning period, parliamentary activities have been halted for 10 days, and members of parliament are also expected to pledge their allegiance to King Charles. Thousands of mourners continue to gather outside Buckingham Palace to pay their respects. Let's speak more on this. We are joined on our Zoom line by political analyst Musa Mdungane. He's based at the University of Dundee in Scotland. Musa, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Perhaps if you could just capture the mood there for us. We saw some visuals of the king arriving to console people who had come out to Buckingham Palace to console him.
Indeed, of course, you know, with the passing of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth this past week, it really ushers a new era in the United Kingdom. You'll recall that on Tuesday she received her 15th Prime Minister, Liz Truss, and so it is a first in British history for the first time where the new sovereign, the new head of state, and the new head of government will all take place at the same time. And so there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the tone that will be set by both these new principles, essentially. But the hope is that this can be an opportunity for a renewal in what it now really truly means to be global Britain. You know that the United Kingdom left the EU in 2016 through a referendum, and there have been questions around what role does the United Kingdom play now that it sits outside of the EU. And many will say that the legacy of Queen Elizabeth is essentially the CommonWealth of nations, a grouping of 54 or so states that were once under the British Empire, and she has really emphasized the unity of the Commonwealth in dealing with global challenges. And it will be key as Britain, you know, trots a new path for it to consider the Commonwealth countries. Among them are countries such as India, Nigeria. These are huge markets and huge economies and countries that will play a huge role in the global economy in the future.
What should that relationship look like?
Well, it has to be one that, number one, is honest about the truth of the past. We need to be at the same page about what that really looks like. The fact is that, you know, the British Empire came at a time where it displaced many people from their land. It has the legacy of the slave trade, for example, you know, and in our own country, in our own experience as South Africans having dealt with colonization, with apartheid, you recall the frontier wars that were fought in Eastern Cape. You know, you recall the Anglo-Zulu War, you know, and you'll recall apartheid as well. There, you know, within the original stance of the ANC in its, you know, strategy towards gaining liberation, it sought to do that via London, via the British Empire, via making appeals to, you know, the royal family in order to gain and ensure and secure rights for the majority of our people. We know that that did not happen. And in 1910, the Union of South Africa, in essence, excluded the majority of the people. So it is a relationship that must be built first by that honesty about history, and two, a genuineness to build new partnerships, to not make decisions for African countries, but to really help Africa together and come up with solutions jointly on global issues, and not to treat the Commonwealth countries, which has often been the thought, as an afterthought. One would argue within the Commonwealth there's a certain level of apartheid. You have, you know, the Australia, Canada, and New Zealands of this world who are treated more fairly than other countries in the Commonwealth when it comes to visa issues, entrance just into the UK. So certain things have got to change in order to really build this new global Britain.
this change, is it a two-way process? Maybe I ask in relation to the role of Africa in this relationship, right? Are we these helpless little children that always need to be assisted by the big, beautiful West? And when I ask that, especially in relation to, you speak of genuineness about the future, you speak of being honest about the past and being honest about history, we are talking about some sectors of society that speak of reparations. You still have a lot of artifacts that are stored in British museums that are still not repatriated back into the continent. So what role do African leaders of 2022 have in creating this genuineness about the future to benefit the people of her continent?
Well, look, I think firstly, in terms of the role that African leadership has got to play, is that it's got to be able to shape up a vision about what does Africa look like. The type of Africa we have today, the challenges we have today. I think a lot has been written about that and a lot is in public discourse already. But then we've got to move really into gear two to say, what does this Africa that we want look like? And what are the resources and the partners that we need in terms of building this new Africa, and how must they show up? So it's hard to build an expectation on a foreign power when you yourself have no expectation of yourself. And I think the key really lies in getting our story right in terms of what it is we want to look like, and then how is it that we go out into the globe with countries such as the United Kingdom, France, Belgium, Germany, and how we then reposition ourselves to say it's time for us to have honest conversations. And part of it is the fact that, if you think of India alone, that the British Empire is expected to have benefited by $47 trillion, and look at the level of development in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, all three, which were affected during their struggle for independence in 1947. So, these are the things that African leaders have got to be able to do, but are they willing to have the right conversations? Are the right people occupying the right spaces? Often when we look at Africa, it seems like the bulk of quality leadership sits outside of that public sector and not inside of it. And they certainly got to be an honest conversation about how we ourselves are looking like before we can reflect on how the world has impacted us. And I think that is the start.
Musa Mdungane is a political analyst based at the University of Dundee in the United Kingdom. Thank you.